Konnichiwa, my name is Logan Charles Luna, and this video is going to be about um, constructive criticism versus destructive criticism. And when I say destructive criticism, I mean when someone just starts talking bad about something simply because they didn't like it, not because they think it was good or bad in an actual critical sense. It's just that they personally don't like that kind of show or movie or song or whatever. And that's very problematic because people often try to push other people away from experiencing something that maybe they're into simply because they want to force their point of view and their opinion on everyone else. And now shifting over to constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is when you genuinely like something, you like a certain genre of music or shows or anime, manga, movies, whatever, and you generally feel disappointed and you feel like you got screwed over when a creator or a company makes something that just doesn't live up to the expectations that they set, not that you've yourselves have set. Because there's a difference between unrealistic expectations of an audience and the total bullshit of a company pretty much proclaiming something as the next big thing. And for examples, the unrealistic expectations of an audience, I'd say when people talk about the ending of something, they put so much emphasis in how something will end. And if the show doesn't have a good ending, or the movie or any other form of media doesn't have a good ending, people often discredit and will just completely throw away any good that the show or other form of media had and simply focus on how the ending was to rely on their criticism. Example for that would be Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was a very interesting, unique show. However, no one who saw Game of Thrones all the way through will ever say that it was a perfect show, or they say it would have been a perfect show had it not been for the final season. And the final season of Game of Thrones, spoilers if you haven't seen it, the final season of Game of Thrones was very disappointing to people because it was just a race towards the finish line. Whereas another show like The Legend of Korra was a limp to the finish line, just let's get it over with. Game of Thrones literally skipped like weeks of story, like something that could have been built up for maybe like an entire other season. They just skipped right to the end and it fell apart really quick, and it turned a lot of people off of the show in general. Now, moving over to something that companies usually tend to do is for anime and manga, mainly manga, the editor is one of the most important parts of the manga creating process because the editor is responsible for what direction the story will take. Usually, the first few chapters of a manga, the author does have a lot of leeway and they get to experiment and try new things and see what works with their story. However, after a story gets somewhat success, the editor has more influence over the story. Example being Dragon Ball Z with Akira Toriyama. So Akira Toriyama's had a few different editors, mostly like other manga authors that create something for a long period of time, they'll have a few different editors. And so the new editor for Dragon Ball Z wanted something different when it came to the villains for Dragon Ball Z. And Akira Toriyama was being Akira Toriyama and felt like he was going to be a dick and threw in the androids. And when I say the androids, I mean Android 19 and Android 20, you know, the clown and Dr. Gero robot form. So the editor argued with Akira Toriyama that these two old guys shouldn't be the final boss for the Android saga. So then Akira Toriyama gave us Android 17 and 18. Then the editor argued that these two punk kids shouldn't be the main antagonists for this story, and how would they beat Goku? They look, they don't look strong. So then he added Android 16, and there was still conflict with the final boss of the Android saga for Dragon Ball Z, and that's where we get Cell. Cell was a throw-in character, and he feels very out of place in the story of Dragon Ball Z, but Cell adapts to just being forced into the story, and the entire story becomes about Cell. It also becomes about Vegeta's pride and how they wouldn't have been in the situation of the Cell saga and the Cell games had it not been for Vegeta's pride getting the better of him, because Vegeta very well could have destroyed Cell. And he chose not to because of his Saiyan pride, because Goku wasn't there to see him win, because Cell conned him into saying, this isn't even my final form, which is a big shonen anime trope, and especially a trope in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, with this isn't even my final form. So Vegeta got goaded into letting Cell upgrade and reach his final form and become perfect. And that led to the downfall of the Z fighters in that moment, because Vegeta couldn't keep his ego in check. And once he got put in his place after losing to Perfect Cell, he felt like a total failure. And it was the Freezer situation all over again for Vegeta, because Vegeta came in expecting to be the big hero, expecting to be the guy who would win because he's an elite. However, he just made things worse. So it puts him into a situation where he has to internalize and reflect on all the choices he's made in his life, and he does have to redeem himself after this huge mess up. And that's the beauty of what came out of the editor and Toriyama just kind of bickering about how the story should be taken in a different direction. Now, when you get success, when you get something that's so major and huge, like Naruto and Bleach, you tend to see the downfall of quality as the years go on and as volumes pile up. And the only the only few exceptions to this would be Oda and Araki. Oda and Araki have been some of the most consistent mangaka for the last 30 years. Oda and Araki have really shown that they are masters in this craft. And the downfall of Bleach and Naruto was definitely burnout and fatigue, especially in the situation of Tite Kubo, because Tite Kubo was never really a big story guy. Tite Kubo was mainly an artist. He liked to draw cool things. and whether or not it needed an explanation wasn't always his top priority. So there were always plot holes and inconsistencies throughout the story of Bleach. But a lot of fans didn't care. A lot of fans just liked Bleach and they liked the characters. However, this definitely got to a breaking point when Taikubo just kind of was dragging along his feet after the Aizen arc concluded. So, after the Aizen arc, Ichigo is supposed to lose his powers forever. And there's a little sliver of hope that maybe one day Ichigo will get his powers back. But it was basically Taikubo trying to end Bleach because he didn't have anything else besides Aizen. Aizen was the be all end all character to be the main bad guy for the story. After Aizen's defeated quite easily, by the way, because, like I said, Taikubo was just exhausted. The grueling, demanding work of a manga artist and an author at the same time, it gets to you. It affects your health, it affects your mental state. And just drawing these last few months every day has really set in art burnout for me. Every now and then I take a break and I just don't draw for a few days. And then I immediately get back into it. One, because I love it. Two, because I genuinely want to improve as an artist. And the problem with Bleach was Taikubo set up a lot of interesting things that fell apart. Even in the Aizen arc and the whole Wakamundo thing, there are so many characters that don't die in Bleach that literally just get thrown away. Like Grimmjow. After Grimmjow's fight with Ichigo, Grimmjow doesn't die. He's still alive. But Noitora, the fifth Espada, comes up and literally pushes Grimmjow out of the picture. And now Noitora is the big enemy standing in front of Ichigo. And this is to set up the big reveal that Nell is actually a former Espada herself. And Nell ages up to her adult form. And she gives Noitora a run for his money. And she's about to kill Noitora until Nell reverts back to her child form. And the explanation for this is that Nell has a crack in her mask. So that's what forced her to turn into a kid in the first place. And that's what prevented her from taking out Noitora. And me especially, it kind of felt like a slap in the face. Like, you're going to build up and hype up this character for a few chapters at that point, and then just completely let her fall flat on her face. Like, she literally just fell down, and that's how her fight with Noitora ended. And Kenpachi had to come in and fight Noitora, and Kenpachi's the one that took him out. So definitely the state of mind that a creator is in affects how a story goes. Like right now with My Hero Academia, the author of My Hero Academia is going through some dark stuff in his life right now, and it definitely shows in the way he's writing the story, because in My Hero Academia, a lot of pro heroes have just been killed off during this fight with Shigaraki. And it goes to show that the little things do affect how someone works. And another major example for this is Araki. In part 5 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, when Fugo leaves the group, originally Fugo was supposed to fight Giorno, and he was going to be a spy for the boss the whole time. But something happened in Araki's life that left him very depressed, and he felt like he couldn't follow through on that storyline. And that storyline was set up pretty well by Araki, because during the Man in the Mirror fight, Araki makes it so that Giorno is now immune to the poison made by Purple Haze, thus making Giorno the only one who was able to fight Purple Haze in the upcoming setup. However, that never happened, and Fugo just left the crew and walked away from the mess of fighting the boss. And now we're going to focus on the subject of my fan art in this video, Rukia Kuchiki. And I love Rukia. And this is just me. This isn't me like writing fan fiction or anything. It's just an idea that I wonder if at one time the editor actually pitched to Taikubo, or Taikubo pitched to the editor, but it got turned down because early on in the beginning of Bleach, Rukia felt like such an important character, like not just a side character. And you know, the manga was called Bleach. It wasn't called Ichigo does cool things with his sword. So originally it felt like Taikubo wasn't sure who he wanted the main character of his series to be. Of course, Ichigo is the stereotypical shonen protagonist. He gets all the power-ups. He's able to just do everything. He's a total Chad. Sorry, Chad. And Rukia gets literally thrown to the side, like Grimmjow and Neliel after her. Because Rukia Kuchiki gave her powers to Ichigo in order for Ichigo to become a Soul Reaper and protect his family. Now, when you get to later parts of Bleach and you see how strong Rukia was at the moment she met Ichigo, that's where the retconning starts. That's where the story compensates for the fact that Rukia didn't really need Ichigo to help her out in that moment. And the show does this by saying that, oh, when Soul Reapers are at a certain part of the real world, they have limits on their powers. Because if they didn't have limit on their powers, then they'd just be destroying everything all the time. And the argument for that is that they're going up against the Hollows, and literally out of nowhere, a Menos Grande could just show up. And if just some Soul Reaper is there unprepared, they're going to die. Now, it makes sense for the powers to be limited in the real world for the captains and the lieutenants because they are very high-level fighters, so they don't need to be going all out all the time when they're in the human world. But again, I just really wish that Rukia Kuchiki was the main character of Bleach. She was just more interesting than Ichigo. And Ichigo's whole thing was, I see dead people. Ichigo's whole thing was, I do what's right because I'm the shonen protagonist. And he felt very boring to me after a while, because Ichigo just didn't really have a personality. Ichigo was just there to be Ichigo, to be the main character, and to fight whatever is in his way. Rukia, on the other hand, had much more of an interesting story. Her relationship with her brother and Renji was very just gripping, and I wish that there would have been more of a focus on that in Bleach. But can't always get what you want. And what we got was a good manga and a good story compared to most. Because that's the thing, people forget that the struggle of staying on Weekly Shonen Jump isn't just to please the audience. You have to please the people on top. You have to please the bosses, you have to make sure that you're selling. You have to make sure that your series is on people's minds. You have to make sure that people care about what happens in your story. So that really puts more added pressure onto authors to focus on what the bosses want and what the audience want. And sometimes it's easier to have a more creative outlet like Araki does now with Ultra Jump. Araki has about a month time frame to make one chapter. And one chapter a month has done so much good in Araki's writing and his art. And he's had an opportunity to really improve overall as a creator. And if you want an example of that, just read JoJolion and read Steel Ball Run, and you'll see just how much Araki has grown and evolved and changed throughout the years. Just simply from the last part. Part 6 was really good and interesting. It's not everyone's favorite part, that's for sure. But it definitely took JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in a new direction. And the universe switch over to the world of Part 7 and Part 8 really made JoJo's Bizarre Adventure kind of this mythical, legendary thing now, that if you're an anime and a manga fan, you have to at least read or seen an episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or else the memes aren't going to make any sense. Alright, thanks for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, or if you just skipped to the end, I'm going to be posting this up on my social media later. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at LCLX25. You can join my Patreon if you want behind the scenes on my artworks, if you want to be able to vote on fan arts I make in the future. If you want to request videos and fan arts, then you can for higher tier members. The lowest tier, you get video shoutouts and you get to vote on fan arts. And then at the top, you get special digital commissions and you get requests. So definitely consider joining my Patreon. Like, share this video, subscribe if you like content like this. And I'll be doing more videos, kind of going in depth into things that I feel get blown out. And definitely, people need to understand the difference between constructive and destructive criticism, because destructive criticism is just someone literally complaining that it wasn't what they thought it was, or it wasn't what they wanted it to be. And I hope I showed the difference here, because just me complaining about Rukia should have been the main character doesn't solve the overall problems with Bleach. It just makes Ichigo not suck up all the spotlight, and it makes him feel less important to the story, which I feel the story definitely needed to put Ichigo aside a bit and let some of the other characters handle things and deal with the world. Because the main problem with a story is when the main character becomes the story, where no one else matters, the plot doesn't matter, the antagonist, the side characters, the rules of this universe and the world that was created don't matter. The main character is just there to be the main character. And the major problem with this is then you get shows like Dragon Ball Z, where they did the Majin Buu saga, where Majin Buu literally became so strong, Goku had to come back from the dead to fight him. And then he just died again. And then he fought him in the afterlife. And then he beat Majin Buu. And I feel like that's just crazy, and that's the downside of having the main focus of your story be one character. I feel like I trailed on too long for the outro of this video, so I'm just gonna end it here. Sayonara.